Within the hushed decay of the old forest, a somber stillness settled each dusk, as though every living creature recognized that nightfall carried a deeper terror than mere darkness. The trees themselves, deprived of sunlight by a canopy of clinging, withered leaves, seemed ready to topple over into shadowy oblivion. No bird ever sang in this domain, no fox prowled through its undergrowth, and no deer paused to nibble on its meager grasses. Situated at the far edge of this dying woodland was a path that led to the remains of a neglected churchyard. Its gravestones stood at crooked angles, half consumed by the roots of oak trees that contorted through the cracked earth. At the forsaken heart of it all stood the ossuary, commonly dismissed by outsiders as a mere crypt. Rumors insisted that it was not just a place for the bones of the dead, but something far more arcane, a gateway to immortality for those who dared to pay the price. I had come to this forest in search of truths rumored through centuries of hushed folklore. Locals, if pressed, would speak only in ominous half-words about the tomb and its promise of eternal life. Their eyes darted nervously to the side whenever the subject arose, as though a malevolent presence hovered just beyond their field of vision. In the village tavern, by the sputtering glow of a single lantern, an ancient widow whispered to me, "You go there and see how the stone door is never locked. Go see this for yourself. Follow the corridor if you dare. Nobody that deep in has come out the same." She refused to elaborate, leaving me with the jarring sensation of being invited to a final test of my courage, or, more likely, my foolishness. I found the path easily enough, an overgrown trail lined with barren birches and moss-laden stones that beckoned me deeper. A certain hush accompanied me, as though each step sealed my abandonment of the civilized world. The moon hung above, swollen and ominously bright, casting elongated shadows across the underbrush. Strange shapes seemed to writhe at the edges of my vision, tangles of brambles or the malformed silhouettes of forest creatures corrupted by this place's strange power. The only real guide in the gloom was the faint flicker of star-washed headstones glinting in the distance. Pressing forward, I soon encountered the crumbling cemetery wall. Ancient mortar had given way to invasive roots that twisted between the stones, forming a natural lattice of twisted branches and cold granite. I stepped over a low section, careful not to catch my coat on the thorns. Ahead, in the pale moonlight, stood the crypt, massive, time-worn, its heavy stone facade inscribed with runes that were barely legible after centuries of wind and rain. Ivy clung to its corners, as if nature itself attempted to cloak whatever abomination lay within. The air around it felt receptive, yet suffocating, a strange mixture of welcome and warning. For several moments, I lingered at the threshold, studying the massive door. It was constructed of wrought iron, scoured by the elements, its crest shaped like a tangled nest of serpents. The metal was cold to the touch, as if it exhaled a chill from eons past. With a rough shove, the iron door groaned open. A grave-like smell seeped from within. Decay, an ancient dust mingling in damp currents of air, greeting me with the intimate acquaintance of a tomb. Another step, and the darkness located within swallowed me. I struck a match, and its thin orange glow showed me a small chamber, lined with skull motifs carved directly into the granite walls. The stone floor led away in a slight slope, descending deeper into the earth. With a second match lit, I realized there were sconces along the walls, a curious reveal of red marble carved into gaping mouths. I placed my flickering match into one of them, and to my surprise, a pale fire kindled, as though the sconces themselves nursed some hidden fuel. This proved to be more unsettling than comforting, filling the passage with an eerie, pulsing glow that danced over grim statuary. My descent revealed a corridor longer and far more elaborate than I had expected. The walls had been etched with sprawling relief sculptures depicting entire generations of robed figures who bowed to an altar of shadow. The altar was not shown in detail, only a silhouette that offered some secret to its followers. Scattered within these carved congregations were visual references to serpents, each coiled and fanged, sometimes flickering a forked tongue that seemed almost lifelike by the sconce's unsteady light. The deeper I ventured, the more the environment gave the impression of a labyrinth, carved by ancient hands far older than the known record of local history. I passed by recessed alcoves containing dusty sarcophagi, some pried open and others still sealed. The chiseled faces of statues resting atop each sarcophagus were strikingly lifelike, contorted with expressions that mingled ecstasy and agony. Caught between reverential awe and lurking dread, I glanced within one open sarcophagus and nearly recoiled. The remains were clearly centuries old, but they bore a shocking semblance of freshness. Pale skin stretched over bone that had not fully decomposed, as though the occupant had been kept in a purgatory of incomplete decay. I closed my eyes, overwhelmed by a vague sense of empathy. A thought flitted across my mind. Perhaps the occupant had pursued immortality, but discovered none of the joys rumored by the living. Continuing onward, the passage expanded into a domed antechamber. The architecture was mesmerizing. Heavy pillars shaped like raging beasts, marble floors inlaid with glimmers of obsidian. At the center stood a lectern carved from black onyx, upon which rested an ancient tome. Its pages were stiff with centuries of dust, though the leather binding seemed in suspiciously good condition. Inscribed on the cover was a single cryptic symbol, a coiled viper devouring its own tail, a grotesque variant of the Ouroboros. My heart hammered against my ribs as I lifted the cover. There, rendered in fine script, was a litany of incantations. To my untrained eyes, they mixed known alphabets with bizarre glyphs. The text spoke vaguely of transcending mortality via a ritual that required supplication within the Chamber of Shadows. A single phrase repeated, written in multiple languages. By offering of blood and bone, by vow of servitude, attain the endless night. As I read and reread these lines, I sensed a presence behind me. Yet when I turned, I found only statues and flickering sconces. Unease continued to coil in the pit of my stomach, as though invisible eyes followed my every breath. I began to wonder if the crypt was breathing too, a living entity that lured wanderers into further layers of gloom. Such thoughts might have been easily dismissed had I not felt a subtle pulse in the stone beneath my feet. It occurred to me that my own footsteps had turned slow and deliberate, as though compelled by an unseen directive. Each time I thought to turn back or close the tome, my curiosity proved stronger than my apprehension. Beyond the antechamber, a narrow set of stairs curved into a deeper level. The walls there were damp with condensation, and an earthy, almost iron-like scent drifted upward. My breathing grew shallow as I pressed on. The promise of discovery overshadowed any sense of self-preservation. Eventually, the stairs ended at a small landing before a carved archway shaped like a serpent's maw. Past it lay a large, circular room lit by a single brazier in the center. The brazier's coals glowed with colorless flame, a phenomenon that defied all logic. Its ghostly light revealed a ring of pillars set with shackles, some of which still held tattered remnants of clothing and suspicious stains marking the floor beneath. The atmosphere felt thick and charged, as though pulsating with the echoes of ancient rituals. In the middle of the chamber, beyond the brazier, was an altar of dark stone. On an elevated dais, a series of painted runes adorned its edges, reminiscent of the script I'd seen in the tome. At its corners, carved gargoyle-like creatures gazed outward with malevolent expressions. The dais felt like a heart, a nucleus that had pumped lifeblood into every stone corridor and statue in this tomb for centuries beyond recollection. Fascinated, yet horrified, I climbed the dais, each step resonating with the dull clang of my boots on the carved steps. The top of the altar was fortified with grooves that formed a shallow basin, presumably to collect or channel something. The faint odor of old blood, coppery and stale, pervaded the air. My stomach twisted in revulsion at the suggestion of sacrificial rites. This was no final resting place for the benign dead. It was a temple for the damned. A rasping hiss erupted from the darkness. I spun around, searching the perimeter. Something unseen slithered along the cracks in the paving, an intangible presence that felt both near and impossibly distant. The atmosphere had changed, thickening into a stifling embrace. The flickering lights seemed to intensify, casting grotesque shadows that danced across the pillars like a macabre pantomime. My breath came in shallow gasps, the tension so thick my lungs felt trapped in a relentless clamp. Then I saw it, an amorphous silhouette gliding between pillars, a formless mass of writhing darkness. It shimmered in and out of sight, like a living shadow that defied the laws of light and perspective. Startled, I stepped back toward the altar, uncertain whether to flee or remain. An unnatural chill traced my spine as the shape drifted across the chamber's circumference. When it paused, I detected a pair of simmering red eyes. They not only glowed, but seemed to burn into my mind, burdening me with indescribable dread. The entity drifted closer, and I realized it did not walk, but flowed, an amalgam of swirling black air that coalesced when it willed itself to be seen. From it issued a hollow voice, a layered whisper that reverberated through bone and marrow. "You seek the gift?" A paralyzing half-second passed before I answered. "I seek answers." My voice trembled, echoing across the chamber in a manner that suggested I was addressing an entity older than the tomb itself. "Answers," it repeated, each syllable dripping with condescension. In an instant it appeared at the altar's side, the murky edges of its outline undulating like dying flames. All who come here yearn for more than knowledge. They hunger for life beyond death. You are no different. Under its glare, I felt as though my carefully constructed rationality was stripped from me. My knees shook, but I forced myself to stand. "How? How is such a thing possible?" I whispered. Its shape recoiled, then gathered itself as if bracing for some solemn pronouncement. "Through devotion," it said, "through service to the shadows. By forging a pact with that which dwells in the eternal night, submit and be granted life beyond the reach of time." A swirl of conflicting emotions raged within me. Could I, who had come searching for mere evidence of the tomb's legends, actually be so tempted by the promise of immortality? A disquieting part of me was entranced by the possibility. "What is the price?" I asked, the words almost choking me. A hiss of something like laughter radiated. "Blood, loyalty, surrender of your mortal soul to the crypt's master. These are the keys to unholy transcendence." It emanated a coaxing energy, a gravity that tugged at my sense of self. "Partake in the ritual, offer a portion of that which sustains you, and you shall know a life unbound by the mortal coil. But mark this, immortality is never the same as freedom." Unbidden, a memory arose of all I had left behind. Family, fleeting joys, regrets that haunted my nights. My curiosity had become desperation by the time I chose to make this journey into the tomb. The promise of evading death's final claim was a siren call. Beneath my pounding heart, something stirred, whispering sweetly of the relief that could come from living well beyond my natural span. Beguiled, I found myself stepping closer to the altar, hand outstretched to trace the carved runes. The shape hovered in silent vigilance. "Will you ascend?" it asked. "Place your hand upon the altar and let the shadows taste your essence." I hesitated, coming face to face with the chilling truth that while the crypt offered a warped path to eternity, it simultaneously demanded I relinquish my mortal soul. Yet, it was too late for half measures. My curiosity had opened the door. I set my trembling hand on one of the grooves that lined the altar. Almost immediately I felt a prickling sensation in my palm, as though the altar itself had grown fangs. A thin trickle of blood started to flow, filling the carved channels. The sensation was not purely painful, it felt invasive, as if countless rivulets of cold current snaked through my veins. My mind blurred with visions. I saw the crypt in eras long past, with hooded celebrants chanting, offering sacrifices. Great swirling shadows enveloped them, until they sagged lifeless and pale. Others rose, transfigured, eyes milky white with an unholy presence. The cycle repeated across centuries. Some who partook disappeared, reduced to dust, while some lingered in half-life, forced to dwell in the gloom. A sudden wave of nausea overcame me, yet I couldn't tear my hand away. My blood pulsed, feeding the black stone as it glowed with a faint crimson hue. In that moment my breath caught, and I felt the thing in the dark presence take root inside me. When it was over, I staggered away, falling to my knees on the dais. My hand still bled, but the wound was unnatural in shape, formed like a twisted rune. The living shadow hovered closer, and I sensed triumph. My entire body rattled with frigid chills, as though my bones hummed to an unearthly melody only the crypt could hear. Then it spoke. "Your vow is given. The path to immortality has begun. Serve the crypt. Feed its hunger. Tend to its secrets. Only through eternal servitude shall you sustain your new existence." A fleeting euphoria threaded through me. My senses sharpened. Even in the faint light, I could see the smallest cracks in the stone. My hearing grew acute, picking up the subtle drip of water from far above. A bizarre sense of power pulsed in my chest. Was this how immortality felt at its dawn? Yet an undercurrent of dread coursed beneath the surface thrill, knowing I was now bound to something unspeakably malignant. Apprehension grew more pressing as the shape glided around me, appraising its new servant. "Go now," it instructed. "Spread the crypt's lure as others once did. The price must be paid infinitely, each new soul feeding the shadow that claims you." The braziers flared, bathing the chamber in a strobing white glare, before fading back into an otherworldly twilight. The presence receded, drifting into the gloom, leaving me alone with the hush of the ancient tomb. Exiting the chamber, I felt a compulsion gnawing at my consciousness. There was an urging to walk deeper into the crypt, to see if I could discover more secrets, or uncover the labyrinth's final gateway. But instead, I retraced my steps back through the corridor, my mind burdened by the awareness that I was inextricably changed. Each sconce I passed seemed to bend its flame in my direction, as if newly aware that I was linked to the crypt's essence. The drive to return to the surface was relentless, accompanied by a twisted sense of relief that at least for now I might see the moon again. Reaching the entrance, I shouldered the heavy iron door open. The night outside felt infinitely colder than before. Wind hissed through the skeletal trees, carrying faint echoes of the forest's dying breath. The moon had retreated behind a shroud of clouds, blanketing the graveyard in a gloom as moist as fresh-turned soil. I was alive, in some sense, yet felt tethered to something old and vast, as though a spectral chain bound my soul to the crypt's own pulsating darkness. Days passed, though they seemed like centuries. My wound refused to heal in any natural sense. Instead, it looked as though the edges beveled inward, forming a distinct black scar. Each passing sunrise felt more intense against my eyes. I grew to avoid bright lights, favoring the hidden corners of the village or my rented room. My nights were restless. Visions of the crypt pulsed through me. Labyrinthine corridors, merciless altars, and wraiths bound to shifting shadow. I dreamed of others, but people from distant lands or ages lingering in the crypt's outer chambers, lured by the possibility of eternal life. Sometimes I heard them scream in my sleep. I'd awaken drenched in cold sweat, feeling both their terror and my compulsion to guide them to that crypt. Hunger seized me, though it was not hunger for mortal sustenance. My appetite for normal food dwindled until it vanished altogether. An impulse gnawed inside me, craving essence, though I dared not fully conceive of what that meant. To quell it, I roamed the village's outskirts at night, wandering near lonely roads, half hoping to meet travelers. Each time I saw a person passing by, the crypt's voice hissed in my mind, commanding me to tempt them, to whisper the legend of a hidden tomb that promised immortality. My body would shiver with anticipation, as though I might feed from the darkness that enveloped them once they stepped beyond the threshold of that cursed door. To resist these demands grew more excruciating by the night. The crypt's hold on me tightened with each breath I took, each step I made in the world above. From the reflection in my mirror, I noted my skin had taken on a faint pallor, the lines beneath my eyes darkening into something bruised and lifeless. My mind spun in circles, wondering, was this the fate of all who succumbed? Did I belong to a legion of pale watchers, cursed to roam and lead unsuspecting souls to their doom? One storm-lashed evening, the crypt's summons grew too strong to deny. Thunder rumbled over the black forest as I ventured out, braving the swirling gusts that carried leaves and debris across a muddy path. The wind echoed with moans, blending with an unearthly voice that thrummed in my ear. "Bring me more," it commanded. "Such is the price of your own immortality." I ached in every fiber to do its bidding, though some shred of my human will must have lingered, because I found myself engaged in an internal struggle. Tears mixed with rainwater on my cheeks as I realized I was but a pawn in an endless cycle of predators and prey, each swayed by the crypt's seductive whisper. Lightning illuminated the black spires of the decaying trees ahead. I paused at a crossroad where an unsuspecting traveler struggled with a broken-down cart. The man, clad in a soaked cloak, looked to me with pleading eyes. I felt the crypt's insistence coil around my heart, urging me to lure him into that dark labyrinth, to promise him the cure for human frailty, the end of mortal suffering. Each step I took closer to him was a betrayal of any residual goodness clinging to my soul. Yet, the hunger roared. I approached, under flickers of lightning. "Need help?" I asked. My voice was hollow, even to my own ears. "Yes, by the saints, thank you," the man replied, fighting the wind to remain upright. He introduced himself as Martin. He was traveling to a distant village to find medicine for his sick daughter. I forced a smile, though it felt twisted at the corners of my mouth. The crypt's murmuring quickened in my mind, a relentless demand for a new sacrifice. Then Martin continued, "I can't afford to fail her. I'll do anything, give anything, to see her well." His words struck me like a thunderbolt. I felt the stirring of the same desperate hope that had once led me into the tomb's gloom. For him, it was the health of his family. For me, it was knowledge, a misguided quest for truths not meant for mortal comprehension. We were both victims of deep longing, and I found myself at the crux of a decision. The crypt's vow demanded I corrupt him with temptation, to promise him that the tomb's secret might cure anything, might grant him and his daughter boundless time. My own conscience rebelled. Even ensnared in my unholy predicament, I could not damn this innocent soul to the crypt's insatiable darkness. The man and his daughter were undeserving of that terror. With the wind shrieking around us, I pressed a shaking hand against Martin's shoulder. In that moment, the crypt's hold pulsed with a vicious wave, urging me to speak illusions of salvation. Instead, I forced the words, "I'm sorry. I can't help you beyond this moment." My heart pounded, resisting the crypt's stranglehold. Ignoring the voice that hammered inside my skull, I helped him shift his cart from the muddy rut. I gave him a direction toward a safer path around the forest. My entire body seized in pain, as if barbed wires laced my nerves. Yet I clung to my final shred of decency, sending him away from the tomb, away from the hungering night. When the traveler was finally on his way, I collapsed against a twisted tree trunk, trembling from head to toe. Rain pounded against my face, but the agony coursing through me was unbearable. The crypt was punishing me for my disobedience, each heartbeat a savage strike. Then, in a moment of sheer anguish, I felt something rip within my chest. I screamed, the sound drowned out by a crack of lightning. My vision darkened, the world spinning. When I regained a semblance of control, I stumbled back into the direction of the crypt. My mind was hazy with torment, yet a realization formed. If I could not entice new souls, I would be devoured. The unholy pact required an endless influx of life force. Without it, my own borrowed vitality would wither. My immortality would be undone. I trudged onward through the battered forest, feeling my strength wane with every step. Each tree seemed to mock me, contorting as the winds howled. I wavered, teetering between an unmatched fear of returning to the crypt and a horrifying certainty that fleeing would offer no reprieve. Eventually, I reached that gate of wrought iron. My body felt as if it carried stones in its veins. The door opened willingly, the tomb eager to reclaim its fleeting agent. I entered the corridor, each sconce guttering into half like at my passing. The deeper I went, the more violently my chest spasmed, as though the crypt's power was turning in on itself, draining the final remnants of strength I possessed. My foot slipped on a damp patch, sending me sprawling. The hiss of a mocking whisper echoed from the shadows. "You disobeyed." I tried to rise, but found my limbs shaking uncontrollably. The living darkness manifested once more, red eyes brimming with ancient malevolence. Another wave of pain pulled a moan from my throat. This time, I could sense my life draining into the cold floor. Weak though I was, I managed to look up, my eyes misted with tears, caught between regret and grim acceptance. "Your immortality was conditional," the shadow intoned. "You broke the pact. Now the tomb reclaims what is owed." My vision warped, flickering between reality and some half-conscious dream. Stone faces carved into the wall glowered at me, their mouths open in silent condemnation. The crypt itself began to pulse, a monstrous heartbeat echoing through every corridor. Darkness seeped under my skin, chilling me until my very bones felt like ice. Then I felt my essence slip out of my body, pooling into the floor's room. The last of my mortal awareness was consumed by an all-encompassing blackness. I do not know how long I remained like that, or if time persisted in any recognizable form. In the crypt's domain, boundaries, such as day and night, held no meaning. What I do know is that I emerged on the other side, no longer wholly living, yet constrained to the tomb's dread existence. At times, I sensed the presence of new explorers, like faint candle flames in a vast gulf of blackness. They enter with trembling hearts and wide eyes, hoping to find the fabled path to eternal life. I watch from the recesses of the crypt's deeper alcoves, drifting as a husk of what once was human. There is no rest in this state, no warmth and no comfort, only the unending emptiness of half-mocking eternity. Within these silent walls, spirits like mine wander ceaselessly, each damned by their own longing for immortality. We are the crypt's chorus of broken souls, consigned to abide in shadow. Outside, the forest continues to decay, its last leaves drifting to the ground, returning to soil. Yet the crypt endures, a promise and a curse, forever calling to those who dream of cheating death. We wait for them in the gloom, unblessed observers of their final choice. Whether they kneel at the altar or flee in terror, the price hangs eternal, an unholy immortality stained with sorrow, feeding on the fresh illusions of the living until the crypt's heart grows sated or grows hungry once more.